Hello guys, welcome to our class this week. Today we have a new topic and this is America Superpower and we are going to talk about the Cold War. What is a Cold War? It's a war fight with words and ideas instead of guns and tanks. This means that people used to have a conversation about problems and ideas instead of send soldiers with tanks, with guns, with bombs, and attack each other. If you remember, United States and the Soviet Union used to be allies with France and Great Britain during the World War II. These two nations were very powerful after the war, but after war, they stopped being allies and they became enemies because they had some different ideas about how to rule a country. This lasted for nearly 50 years. So this was called the Cold War. This is a vocabulary you are going to see during this chapter. We are going to talk about capitalism, socialism, communism, and some other terms. So you need to read this, and if you need some help, you can go to Google and you can look and search for more information about this vocabulary. Okay, let's see how the Cold War began, okay? Even before the end of World War II, tensions were building between the US, United States of America, and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, or Soviet Unions. These two countries had different ideas about government and economics and how the world should be run after World War II. The US is a democratic republic, which is a type of government where we choose representatives to make laws. We can vote for a president, we can vote for some other men to make laws and rule the country. The economic system in the US is known as free enterprise or capitalism. In a free enterprise, individuals or people are free to own or work for a business of their choosing. This means that you can have the work you want. You can also have your own business and you can choose your type of living, actually. Socialism spread throughout Europe after the war. In a socialist system, the government owns major industries such as banks, airlines, railroads, and power plants. And people own some stores or farms or little businesses. Together with the government, consumers and businesses control the economy. Then we have the communism, in the system in which the government has complete power. This means that everything belongs to the government. So the Soviet Union was run by a dictator and the people did not get to vote. So people did not have the right to vote for somebody to lead the country. The USA and other Western nations, they wanted to end communism. But the Soviet Union, they wanted to spread it and then control all the communist countries. So people ruling the Soviet Union, they wanted to have more power, if you see it this way. They wanted to spread. That means that they wanted to make more countries communism, and then they wanted to control them. The Iron Curtain. Following the Germany's defeat, the Allies divided the country. This means that some of the Allies, we know Great Britain, France, and USA. They divided the country because the Soviet Union wanted to do something else with the other part of the country. So the US, Great Britain, and France, they governed sections to Western Germany, which became a free democracy. Then the Soviet Union governed Eastern Germany, which became a communist state. The Allies also divided German capital of Berlin, even though it was in the Soviet sector of Germany. On the west side of the Iron Curtain were the democracies of Western Europe, and in the east side, the communist nations. For this matter, they built a wall. I don't know if you have heard about the Berlin Wall. The city was divided at the end of World War II. The eastern part was under the Soviet control, and the western part was controlled by the Allies. Thousands fled from eastern side to west side. Why? Because for many people, communism is not a good idea to rule a country. So they had the chance to fled or to go away from one side to the other side. The wall was built in 1961. The Soviets built the wall to prevent people from leaving East Berlin. And they had soldiers there to guard the wall. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the wall fell in 1989. So that means they had the wall there for 28 years almost. So there was a long time that they had Germany divided in two. And it was a bad time because people who tried to cross were killed by the soldiers there. The Berlin Wall became the symbol of communist dictatorship. This wall is very popular. If you are interested, you can look for more information in internet. Okay, so you can look for it as the Berlin Wall, and you can see what happened and why they built this wall. Okay, after all this, there was a treaty, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, actually. In 1949, 12 allied nations signed a treaty in Washington, D.C. These 12 allied nations founded the North Atlantic Treaty Organization to support democracy. The President Truman promised to help any country that the Soviet Union tried to turn communist. This policy was known as the Truman Doctrine or containment policy. This policy was a military strategy to stop enemy expansion. They did not want communism to spread. They wanted to stop communism. And we finished this with these conclusions that I made. And I want you to read all the presentation and you can get your own conclusions. And maybe you can see if we have the same conclusions at the end. The Soviet Union differed from its allies by having a different political point of view. Remember, they wanted to have communism spread by many other countries. Soviet Union wanted to spread communism, I told you that, and by this they wanted to control other nations. For me, they have this thirst of power, and that had them blinded. They wanted to have the control. If you read about other wars, you can see that it's always about power. Who is more powerful? Who can get the control of oil or something like that? Staying together make them stronger. And I'm talking about the allies because remember the other three countries and more countries that got together? They were together, so they defeated the Soviet Union ideas. Even though it was a Cold War, remember a Cold War is when you talk, when you have a conversation with no guns. Even though it was a Cold War, many people died. And all this uh, well, brings poverty and breaks the economy of a country. War do that. So, um, so we can say Western democracies had always been hostile to the idea of communism. So, by history, I can say the United States were afraid to have communism in their own country, and they mentioned something about nuclear weapons and many other things um, that they could use in a war. So I hope you have learned something today. And if you have questions, you can always go to Google. I have told you this before in class. Use your computer and your tablets and your phones to research and learn more things about history. History is beautiful. Knowing about history is very nice for you. So I hope everything gets clear. See you next time.